Hi guys. So I read the book called Small Great Things by Jodi Picoult. The book centers on two main characters named Turk and Ruth. Turk is a white supremacist who takes his wife to the hospital when she's in labor, and Ruth is a labor and delivery nurse who ends up taking care of Turk's wife and baby the morning after she delivers. So Ruth is African American, and because of that, Turk decides to ask Ruth's supervisor to take her off their service completely. He decides that he doesn't want any African Americans involved at all, or even touching his baby or his wife. What ends up happening is that Ruth is the only person available, and his son goes into cardiac arrest, and she doesn't start chest compressions immediately because she was told not to touch the baby at all. Meanwhile, her supervisor ends up coming in and telling her to start doing chest compressions, which Turk then ends up seeing, and after his baby dies, he decides to go through with investigating, and Ruth ends up being charged with murder of the baby. So there's a lot of different issues that are brought up throughout this book. I think that some of the main influences would be Francis, who is a character that greatly influences Turk. It's Turk's father-in-law. Turk, throughout his childhood, goes to all these almost like rallies for whites, and where they talk about how they just want to continue their race and they want to get rid of everyone that is of a different race. They support any violence towards people of different races or different cultures, such as Jewish people, Muslims, African Americans, and it's very interesting to read the book through their perspective, and you somewhat realize why he feels this way, but you can also see how absurd it is to people like me who have grown up believing completely opposite things of him. And I think the more that you read it, you understand that the culture that he grew up in created a lot of barriers for him, and he was always able to blame everything in his life on other people and other races, and always think that he was the good one and everyone else was the problem. I think that's why in the book he ends up trying so hard to get Ruth in trouble when his son dies, because he refuses to believe that his son simply died. He wants a scapegoat, basically. He wants someone to take the blame for it. And unfortunately, Ruth becomes the end of that. I think another barrier was his lack of medical knowledge. He didn't really understand why his son passed away, and I think that gave him a lot of hostility because he felt that it had to be someone's fault. So reflecting on this, I think that as a healthcare professional, I hope to become a doctor, that you're always going to have to deal with people that have different beliefs than you, and this book illustrates that very well. Ruth, the African American nurse, tried very hard to please him, and in the end, she had to realize that she can't please everyone, that there was no way she was going to please him. And I think that takes a lot for someone to have to understand that and be able to look past it and realize that it says nothing about you personally. In addition, I think that there were a lot of things we could have done for Turk. We could have given him more resources and given him support groups so he wouldn't be so angry about his son's death, and also just explained why his son died, because in the book you learn that it had nothing to do with anything Ruth could have done. He had a heart defect. So I think if he could have actually understood what was wrong with his son and why he passed away and had that been explained, he would have been less angry, and perhaps Ruth would have never been charged with the murder of his son to begin with. In addition, I think that it teaches you a lot about just generally being non-discriminating, that there throughout the whole entire book there's a lot of areas where people are very discriminatory, and I think that it really opened my eyes. I genuinely enjoyed reading the book and learning through two different perspectives, and hearing the first-hand perspective of Ruth and hearing the first-hand perspective of Turk. And I enjoyed the book, and I think it'll help me a lot throughout my career.